So now it's time for the spoiler talk about episode 8, Sera. And I may be a little overly critical, but as overly critical as I am, apparently I am way too kind because some people were just really annoyed, lost all hope, and even compared it to the nightmare of Rise of Skywalker or maybe the atrocity that was the ending of Wheel of Time. I don't think it's anywhere close to that abysmal end of the spectrum where there's nothing important, nothing substantive. It was all cheap gimmicks. I would agree, though, that there was an alarmingly large amount of emptiness as we concluded this season. What shall we say about this? Well, I hinted at this earlier, but now I can get more in depth that Frankie and Caleb have a very sad farewell because, I guess, because Frankie has robophobia and she's a racist. Also, Caleb doesn't want to die in front of her eyes. Bet they have a nice moment of, I saw my daughter grow up. I am so happy, daddy man. And time to go on the boat. This is not a strong ending at all. This just feels very cheap, very sentimental. It is well acted. Why don't you get on the boat? Just not going to. I guess Aaron Paul, his salary is just too big. Some people also point out in the fight with Clementine, why did Frankie wait so long to do the badass, hey, I forgot to tell you about my one bullet, and then shoot Clementine and save Caleb from certain death? I'm not totally on board it was that awful because, again, Clementine and Caleb were too physically close. She needed some distance between them. She only had one bullet. She is injured. But yes, she could have been more active in the fight. She could have been helping him way more. Instead, she's just kind of a bystander. I get it, you're injured, but you're only going to wait for the last minute to help? That felt very, very cheap. And that's kind of like the theme of a lot of these stories that the fight sequences were well done and well executed. However, they seem to be in service of fairly hollow storylines. There was a lot of great substance with William, and at least part of Clementine, but really, yeah, for the majority of these stories, it just didn't seem to go very far. I do think, however, some people were going too far that was incomprehensible or it was all phony or showy or silly, like with Hale and her transcendence, saying, well, what is that all about? But as even a hostile podcaster noted, we did get the broad strokes. She wanted a kind of bad utopia based on her extreme pessimism. Christina symbolically represents the extreme optimism of giving people free choice and all that stuff. So I do think they mapped out the broad structure well enough. And some people were pointing to the plot hole, alleged plot hole, that, well, William shot Hale in the head. And why isn't she dead? Because Maeve is dead and Bernard is dead. What's going on? Well, I think it would be pretty damn silly, given that Hale is technically like the god of this universe. You just took out God with a single bullet. That just seems really stupid. So I'm okay with a contrivance that maybe her pearl or her head or her physical body is much more durable. It does bring up question why he bothered to kill her. He should have just destroyed everything, sent the world into chaos, and just run off. Because, I mean, he knows, like, well, I could kill her, but she's got a spare body. She still controls the drones. I'm sure the drones are not going to be like, oh, we're going to shut off now. They probably have backup plans, but whatever. And some people complain about the opening sequences where we got some kind of callbacks with some of the older actors. I thought it was fine. I thought it was a part of the world building of how everything is going into chaos. My more main concern is William's kind of trek to the dam seemed highly under explained. It just seems he wants to bring chaos to all worlds and Hale's going to stop him. Okay, she's going to stop him. Why didn't she bring more drones? She sends a few of the hosts after him. Why not do a dog pile? Why not send an entire army against him if you want to stall him? Because he makes really short work of those three hosts. He just, they're done. There's a lot of clunkiness to payoffs and setups. And what's really strange is so much of season 4 was actually well constructed. It seemed to be going places. And the stories up until episode 7 actually did resolve themselves for the most part in pretty good fashion. Yes, they left a lot of paradoxes and illusions, but I'm okay with that. I just felt when it came time to segue from the end of this season to the beginning of the next season and teasing what is lying ahead, there's not much up ahead that is worth even going through because apparently with Christina, it's all in her brain. Like Mia's a projection, Teddy's a projection, and the projections are just stating the obvious. So remember the tree? Remember the tree? Remember the tree in the first couple of episodes? There was a tree? Well, Mia's talking about a tree. And Christina's, yes, you talked about the tree. I believe in free will now. And you're like, what? That's not the way it works. It seems they were stuck with a bad binary. And being a Kubrick person, I think it would have been better going to the Kubrick extreme of just having, I'm going to say it, have Mia and Christina have like hot lesbian sex, get totally naked. Teddy's watching them, and they go full eyes wide shut, and they're transported to a magical mansion, and he's going all around seeing the hosts and humans destroying one another, or making love, or creating art. Just go full blown crazy. If the plot is not really going to follow a structure or a logic or anything, go full blown crazy and just go there. But they didn't. They have well executed fight scenes. Some of these plot lines at least have enough stability, but really it seems like the writers and the director weren't even interested in it because there's not that much creativity. It's like we kind of know Bernard left something for Hale to use, and when she pulls the gun, you're like, that's it? Like, not an infinity gauntlet, not a super laser, not a super secret weapon, just a gun. A gun is going to stop the man in black for the second time in a row. You're like, okay, I guess. Simplicity, there's a virtue there. But I think them taking this middle route of making an obvious symbol and an obvious payoff had diminishing returns. It would have been better either you're going to go the Kubrick route of like Clockwork Orange or Full Metal Jacket or Eyes Wide Shut, just overwhelm the viewer with sensory input, with graphic imagery or even subtle imagery. Here, they just went really midway. So you either want to go really, really subtle. So when the image, the symbol, the line of dialogue comes back, it's very profound. Here, paradoxically, they kind of played with the very subtle stuff and some of the Kubrickian stuff, but they really settled in this middle, corporate, boring, very generic path. And it just ruined a lot of the storylines for me. And the only ones that were really worth talking about were William and Clementine, but they're not the only characters. So a lot of these characters just felt like they just pushed a big pause button. I guess Caleb is dead. Stubbs is dead. Bernard is dead. And Maeve is dead. Okay, those are brave choices. But for these other characters, it just feels like, oh, they're just going to be paused and their evolution is going to be saved for the next season. Why didn't you finish some of the evolution at the end of this season? Reasons, or contracts, or capitalism, or commercialism, or we ran out of ideas, or, well, we don't even know if we're going to be renewed next season. I think it would have been better resolve enough of these stories and give us a whetting of the appetite for the next season. Instead, it felt like not laziness, but a kind of lack of ambition. So it's a very disappointing finale. I still would recommend the season, but I think I may have been a little overly praiseworthy of its good parts, but I've been a little undercritical when it got weak. And definitely the finale shows and exposes a lot of the tensions that I think they did a good job of resolving for most of the season, but just did not master at the end. And that is very, very disappointing.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
Impossible.